Hello, hello. We are going to get started as everyone starts to join here. Hello, welcome. So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, all. My name is Jillian Oakes, and I'm the Director of West Coast Operations for the Greater Zurich Area, in short, GZA, the official economic development and investment support agency of Zurich and the surrounding Swiss states or cantons. It's my great pleasure to host and moderate today's session on deep tech recruiting in Switzerland. If you're wondering what GZA does, we support fast-growing tech companies worldwide with their expansion into Switzerland free of charge. Learn more at greaterzuricharea.com. Thank you all for joining us today for the virtual roundtable with our esteemed panel, Klaus Fuchs, co-founder of Rockstar Recruiting, Leonard Cohen, EMEA Executive Recruitment at Google Cloud, Matthias Anauen, Director of New Business Units for the Canton of Zurich, and our special guest, Brandon Cohen, Director of Talent at Definity. As we all know, the global war for talent is at an all-time high, and getting the right people at the right time with the right organizational fit to your company is essentially a Rubik's Cube. But luckily, Switzerland has been called a recruiting tool in and of itself, given its technical talent from leading universities, the international talent pool, very attractive employment contracts, and of course, the inspiring backdrop of the Alps, aka the true mountain view. This event is tailored towards companies looking to expand their engineering operations to or within Europe, as well as provide valuable insights into navigating the local and European talent market, in addition to optimizing your recruitment strategies, ensuring a successful expansion into the European tech landscape. Here's what we plan to cover today. We'll discuss availability of talent in Europe, how to recruit for Web3 and AI, pitfalls to avoid when recruiting in Europe, lessons learned growing from tech teams in Switzerland, and discuss labor law considerations of hiring. Before we begin, a few housekeeping items for those of you new to the 23 platform. To the right, you'll see a chat on your screen. We will collect all questions on the Q&A chat and reserve them for after the panel discussion. Today's format is intentionally interactive, where we get cross-panel perspective on each topic. So looking forward to that. And with that, let's do a short round of intros, starting with Klaus.
Been in Switzerland since 13 years. I'm originally German, now Swiss. I'm a co-founder of Rockstar Recruiting. I've been affiliated with ETH for a long time, and happy to introduce you to the world of deep tech recruiting today.
Thank you so much, Klaus. Leo?
Yes, hi everyone. Thank you, Julian. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Leonard. I'm part of Google Cloud Executive Recruitment Team. I've been in Switzerland for almost 7 years now, recruiting in different directions for small and large companies, first as a headhunter and second as one of Swisscom talent attraction manager and head of people and recruiting. And I will have the pleasure to speak about executive recruitment here in our beautiful Switzerland.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Matthias.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matthias Inauen, and I represent the Canton of Zurich, like the state of Zurich, which is a public partner of the Greater Zurich Area. And I'm always happy to support you if it comes to work permits, tax discussions, and also the local setup. It's a close, free of charge support that we give from stateside. Quickly to my background, I was working at ETH biotech spin-off company, business development, so I also know a bit the other side of scale-ups, and I'm happy to support your expansion into Switzerland and Europe.
Fantastic. And last but not least, Brandon.
Hello, I am Brandon Cohen. You might hear from my accent that I am actually not local here, which is true. I am the token American on this panel, and I'm happy to be here. But I've been in Zurich since 2007. I originally came here on a 2-year assignment working for a high-tech company out of New York that sent me out here, and I'm still here now. So life has a funny way of working out, but I'm very excited to continue the journey here, and we'll give you a little bit of insights about that. I've been focused on kind of the technical recruiting and technical people part of scaling organizations since the first .com boom. And yeah, I haven't been able to get out of this kind of bubble yet. So thank you very much for the time, and I'm looking forward to this conversation today.
Perfect, perfect. Excellent. So now let's get into the presentation here. So why Switzerland? Many, many good reasons that I think all of us are excited to share with you. But first, Matthias.
So as you can see, we would say that stability is a key factor. And also one of the reasons is that we are a multi-political party country. So to speak, we have 3 presidents. And also when we have a top globally universities when it comes to deep tech, as you will probably also see later in the presentations. And a third factor, I would say, is the quality of life. The ones that experience this in Switzerland or in Zurich, it's easy to bring talents from Europe or globally to Zurich, to the Greater Zurich area, and usually they want to stay here. Sometimes it can be some issues with the work permits, but I mean, it's a great framework condition that talents like to live in the region.
Amazing.
So next slide, please.
Yeah, and as you can see, we are really a unique country in Europe also because of the quality of infrastructure that are well developed, well maintained. We have 3 best-in-class international airports that have also the asset to be very close to the city, in Zurich, in Basel, and in Geneva, where you can access to the airport in 15-20 minutes, and also a very reliable roadway system. So reliable that it happens sometimes that we can meet leaders in the train. And I can share one anecdote here. When I was working for Swisscom as head of people and recruiting, I happened to have one of my leaders meeting a candidate in the train between Bern, the capital city of Switzerland, and Zurich, whereas it was impossible to have the agenda coordinating, as a lot of people take the train on this line, and as it's very reliable in the morning or late at the end of the day. I happened to organize a meeting between one of our leaders and the candidates that was able to convince him to come. So the infrastructure can play an important role doing business here, also when it comes to meeting the people. Another aspect that is important and that makes that Switzerland is a really unique country and a very attractive country is that we have a cultural and linguistic very important diversity. We have 4 national languages, and the vast majority of the population speaks English, so it's never a problem to do business in English as well. And in addition, 39% of the permanent resident population has a migration background. Could it be linked to different countries, neighborhood countries, or even with the US, which is one of our major economic partners. And last but not least, with the mountains, with beautiful lakes that you potentially know when you think about Switzerland and this scenic nature, you're never very far from a beautiful landscape. I speak from our beautiful city of Switzerland, and I just walk 10 minutes and I have the chance to swim in a beautiful lake every day. And you have from every main city here in Switzerland a direct access to this luxurious nature. That's why Julian was referring as Switzerland and especially Zurich being really the real mountain view.
Okay, so when you select a location, obviously we're here to present Zurich today, and Gillian, is it you that was originally on the slide? I was unmuted, so I'm taking over, I guess. And Zurich has what I would consider a very well-trained workforce, namely trained by universities, the likes of ETH and EPFL in Lausanne, Zurich respectively. I've been there myself. The rankings and the leadership and faculty is outstanding, and so are the students that later on turn into the labor force that we are proud to have in Switzerland. Combined with a business-friendly environment, this unique combination is including with the taxation scheme that's competitive here, one of the what we consider most attractive markets in Europe. Then I would go to the Next slide. Now, talk about Zurich. This is my home turf. I was in the ETH affiliated with the ETH AI Center. It's one of the strongest universities that we have in continental Europe, leading in 10 out of the 16 subjects that are usually ranked, top 10 in 10 out of them, especially in machine learning and AI in deep tech. ETH Zurich is one of the places where leading research happens. For example, on the side of robotics and drones, there's very prominent research being done there. And this leads to a numerous companies that have decided to settle down in the Greater Zurich area. You can see some of them on the map, and these are the likes of Google, Meta, Huawei, Magic Leap, Sony. There are many that consider Zurich the talent hub that they need to be at to do their research. And this is really an outstanding hub where you can really see that research leads to Zurich becoming an AI, a deep tech hub. Yeah, if you want to be part of that, I can only recommend it. Next would be Matthias, right?
Exactly.
Looking at the employment law, it's clearly that it's very liberal and employer friendly. It's actually a common sense approach that we have in Switzerland with a high flexibility. And in particular, you can see it when you look at notice periods, which are usually between 1 and 3 months. And so even by law, you have a freedom to terminate. Usually we hear the salaries are high, not so much anymore in these days, actually. And also, if you look at the working hours, 42 hours a week, also leading to high productivity. So in general, you see the ranking, ease of hiring and firing. Switzerland is one of the best. Next slides. Now, when we look at the law, the Foreign National Integration Act, it's important for you to know that within Europe, it's free movement of people. So no working permit needed. So our department is not involved. It's actually a registration period, a registration procedure. When now you have a national that you want to hire outside of Europe, so non-EU EFTA nationals, then you need to apply for a work permit as an employer, and you need to do some efforts. The employees need to be high qualified, but they can live in another canton than they work. Next slide, please. This shows you how to apply a work permit. It's actually, you can do it online. It's quite easy to do. I will not go in too much into the details. Maybe one thing that is interesting is that in the past, you had to go quite through a process of job posting and demonstrating that you looked for employees within Europe. But when you are in a sector as you are in deep tech, where we have a shortage of skilled labor, you can actually demonstrate this to the administration, to the government, that there is a lack of people, and then you do not need to do the precedence of domestic employees. And when you have to do it, it's kind of also a straightforward process. You have to file the job advertisements where you had to put them online, and the list of applicants with information why you rejected them. And also you see that there is still some weeks, the whole process, but it came down a bit. It's now between 4 and 6 weeks. You have to take into account that finally there will be issued all the visa that the employees can enter Switzerland. So it needs a bit of time, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions when you want to hire some specific talents. Next slide, please.
Sorry, can I just jump in real quick, Matthias? Just from a employer perspective, I also have had just a great experience in terms of working with Swiss authorities. It seems like it's a very clear, straightforward, easy process when there are talented people who are paid at a certain rate, which is kind of market rates. it's a very welcoming environment. And so that's why we're actually able to like really think about global talent and high-end talent and not have to worry as much about this stuff. So it's a very different game, for instance, in the H-1B visa type of situation. And it's also very kind of small, and I find very interesting in terms of having conversations and actually even kind of having a dialogue back and forth about a particular person. And just being able to put a clear rationale forward is a great way to be able to think about talent from, they want talented and well-paid people here. And it's a nice place to do business in that respect.
And I would say, perhaps from the Google perspective, we are here in Zurich with the largest research center, so IT, most technical qualified people outside of Mountain View in the US. So it's been possible that Google has grown so much here in Zurich, thanks to really the fact that the authorities are very pragmatic in the way they conceive the system. And if you compare the time you need to get a visa or working permit in Ireland, for instance, or in Denmark, in comparison, when we speak about candidates that are coming outside of the European Union nationalities, it's much easier here in Switzerland because we don't have to wait 6 to 12 months, which is what we have at the moment for the locations I previously mentioned. So definitely, there is a kind of ease and pragmatic approach to business that is very helpful for small and large companies.
Amazing. Okay, moving into Crypto Valley and Web3 as an innovative hub. Klaus, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yes, so I already introduced that AI is a big topic in the Greater Zurich area, and so is crypto. Both can be considered deep tech, if you're not familiar with it, I'm happy to introduce the Crypto Valley. Nowadays, well over 1,000 companies are affiliated with the blockchain technology, and most famously, Ethereum was founded in the canton of Zug, which is right next to Zurich, and ever since this domain has really been striving with, as said, well over 1,000 companies being present here today, which is a lot for a small country like Switzerland, and we're proud to have them. And they're also supported by favorable regulation, stability, and so on. Next slide. When you are thinking of opening a branch in Switzerland, I'm here to tell you about the market rates. Of course, you can find all sorts of statistics, but we track the deep tech sector quite significantly. We at Rockstar are serving the Swiss deep tech sector with talent since 6 years. So we know what's happening in the market, what rates are being paid. And I'm not here to tell that Switzerland is a commodity and cheap talent market. That's not true. There's world-class talent being found in Switzerland and brought to Switzerland, hired in Switzerland, and that's also the reason why so many famous companies have chosen Switzerland as their domicile and have been very successful here. You find a couple of names at the blockchain in the blockchain domain here. Ethereum, already named, Definity will be, of course, introduced today as well, and there are numerous ones and probably even more to follow. In terms of market rate, if you hire a blockchain developer, blockchain engineer, gross total salary rates are roughly average 126,000 Swiss francs per year. If you compare it to the Bay Area, I think talent is great in both places, but if you decide to come here, you even get a discount, so to say. Not being cheap, I think it's world class and money well spent. Next slide. And similarly, I'm here to also introduce you to the current market rates of talent in the machine learning domain. You can see the distribution as well down on the bottom right. Again, there's top companies here, the likes of Google and Apple, Huawei, and others, but also many startups, of course, and it's just the market that we see. And here, average rates are, at the moment, growth rates are 124,000 Swiss franc, which again is world-class talent, as we believe, and again, a bit or significantly more affordable than in the Bay Area. And if you decide to come here, we're happy to help you find the talent that you need on the ground in Switzerland.
Okay, So moving into deep tech recruitment best practices. Over here.
Sure. Thanks, Jillian. That's our daily job. So we help startups and companies find their next machine learning engineer, cybersecurity expert. So we have quite an understanding how the Swiss market works, what doesn't work. And there's some difference when you think of traditional technology recruiting, think of SAP and Java, compared to the sort of modern tech stacks, deep tech recruitment. And I'm happy to shed some light today on what I believe are good practices, and give you some takeaways from what we see. So if you come here and you would start your company and involve yourself as a founder in hiring, you probably invest quite some cost and time, and especially opportunity cost, going to all these events and recruiting fairs and find the talent that you need. Similarly, setting up an HR team in Switzerland can be of course quite an overhead, and you need to find that yourself first of all as well. It takes some time. There are job boards in the market that you can use, but of course I'm here to recommend agencies that are specialized in doing that. One of them being us, and that can be an efficient way of you trying to get your first talent on the ground in Switzerland. Next slide. What helps us as a recruiter to find that talent, because it is rare and scarce, and also we need to be present in the community, and that's really the takeaway that I want to give today, is being present in events. We are present at least one event per week in the name of our clients and candidates. We have a calendar that you can also see online, where most relevant tech events in Switzerland are being presented. So if you're interested in one of these events, or learning more about events in general, we're happy to connect you with the right hosts and recommend you also an event strategy where you can find your talent that you need. I think what helps is having a modern tech stack. Candidates today are really, really interested in learning opportunities on the job that can be as affordable and cheap as a Coursera subscription for each and every candidate. It's really also money well spent. Presence in the community is key to being successful. Hackathons, conferences, there are many, and you need a strategy to be there. There are many stakeholders in deep tech. These can be student university clubs or associations of developers. I think you want to be there as well. Of course, compensation is a topic. Bonuses, equity, base salary are very important aspects when candidates make the decision about their next job. I showed you some statistics today, and if you want key talent, think about how you want to position yourself compared to the market. Of course, a good employer brand helps. Bigger companies have that. Smaller companies need to build that up. Today, we also see talents often requiring or asking for something like an impact company. Sustainability is often the one that people look for today. If you can tell that story, that really helps also finding that deep tech talent. And of course, the hybrid office is something that candidates really ask for. Of course, there's a trend back to the office that we all see, and especially maybe even more than in the US here in Switzerland. But if you have a deep tech recruiting strategy, maybe think of how you can make candidates also enjoy a hybrid office, because that's really popular. Next slide. Yeah, I want to share just 2 examples of recent successes that we had, placements in the deep tech sector. Of course, ChatGPT is all the buzz right now, and we as a recruiter helped the US companies find that product manager that they were looking for, that has already quite some experience on the OpenAI ChatGPT API. And yeah, it's one of the first OpenAI roles that was posted on public job boards in Switzerland. Yeah, one of them, of our 3 candidates, actually got the job and yeah, is working there now. Next slide. Another successful case that I really want to highlight today is a Canadian startup that relocated or opened a branch in Switzerland, even together with the Greater Zurich Area. So it's a really nice success story that we share. Here, the topic is computer vision and mobile. React Native, and that first key hire, that team lead, was recommended from us and hired, and is now setting up the team and creating even more jobs here in Zurich. Next slide. Yeah, thank you, and handing over to Dfinity.
Great, thank you, Klaus. Once again, a reminder, I'm Brandon Cohen, and I want to give a little bit more of a deep dive case study, if you will, about the Dfinity Foundation. I'm just setting my timer as well so I can keep track of that. Before we get into the weeds, though, it's kind of, we have an interesting use case in terms of being both having roots in Silicon Valley and also in Crypto Valley, and a little bit of our journey along the way, which I think will weave into some things that might be kind of interesting in terms of the ecosystem. But before getting into any of the specifics, I want to kind of give a quick high-level overview about the kind of soil, if you will, or the kind of culture and the kind of environment that's going on here locally in Switzerland. So just first of all, we just celebrated the 10-year anniversary, if you will, of the kind of founding of quote unquote Crypto Valley. And there's kind of it was a nice chance to look back over the past decade and kind of see where things started. And it really kicked off with Bitcoin Swiss and with Vitalik Buterin, a 19-year-old whiz kid who was very actually interested in Bitcoin. So interested in Bitcoin that he's like, oh, this is amazing. I'm going to spend my whole life and start with Bitcoin Magazine. And then also realized, actually, I could create a new thing called Ethereum. And he was trying to figure out how to set up the legal entity. He figured out there's a really great way to do that here that I'll talk about too, that a lot of us have actually followed in his footsteps. And so there's a really kind of great tradition in terms of how many, especially layer 1 blockchains and really kind of low-level protocols have set up shop in here. So there's a quantity aspect, over 11,000 registered projects, and all those aren't companies, but a lot of times they're foundations that I'll get to in a second. So it's in good hands there. I think that on the positive side, quantity is really great. I think on the maybe the negative side as well is that we have a lot of mailboxes and business addresses here. But I'd love to actually see more also kind of ecosystem and builders here as well. And so we want to try to continue to support that over the next decade as well. But I think one of the things that also draws a lot of these people and projects here from the beginning is kind of very culturally aligned principles from Switzerland and the Web3 kind of ethos. And when I talk about the Web3 principles or ethos, it's not about a scammy, that weird stuff. It's actually more thinking about the technology, especially from a decentralization perspective, especially from a pioneering type of perspective as well. So there's a whole ethos of decentralization from a technology perspective, as well as in Switzerland, it's very decentralized and very, very local. So governance is kind of done at a local level. Taxes are very local. There's different languages, as we kind of heard about before. And in some ways, it's a kind of a big deal about direct democracy. And so these ideas of different DAOs and governances also make sense. There's also a kind of banking and I think finance tradition here that also lends itself well to setting the stage for more decentralized finance as well. It's not new principles, for instance, to think about things in an innovative way. It's not new principles to be kind of discrete, even in terms of how you think about money and kind of things such as cryptocurrencies. So the other kind of big thing to point out is kind of the legal framework. So in kind of comparing it to the kind of current situation that's going on in the States that I read about every day, there just needs to be more. There's not a lot of regulatory certainty, which causes a lot of stress in a lot of ways. And I think we've really been able to do an amazing job with the Swiss government saying, hey, we don't really know exactly what's going on here, but we're very open in learning about it and talking about it and kind of being on the cutting edge. And so they're very open to having these conversations, and it's had that reliability that allows, I think, these pioneers and then all these projects and companies to register and be aligned with this ecosystem here. The quick also piece of this is called a Stiftung Foundation, and this is maybe a transition to the next slide, because this is what the Dfinity Foundation is, and this is actually what the Ethereum Foundation kind of started, and it's actually a Stiftung in German. If you go next slide, please, Julian. I want to take a quick look at one such Stiftung, Dfinity, that I've had the opportunity to work for almost 4 years now, a little bit over 4 years. And just the quick deal with this is that we have a European founder. He's English. He actually went to Silicon Valley to raise money. because he didn't feel like there was enough either capital or risk-taking to really have this in Europe at the time, to really be able to finance an ambitious type of research project. So he moved to California, set up shop. Our first office was in Palo Alto. That's where the whole thing kind of got started from a business and technical perspective. But we were kind of set up on the organizational side from a Stiftung and not-for-profit. So we've kind of, things have changed over time, and Zurich started off kind of more as a research center. Our first hire was the head of research, Jan Kamenisch, who's a Swiss guy, ETH, IBM Research, world famous cryptographer, has his own Wikipedia page, that type of stuff. It really was kind of amazing to have him come on board, and we were able to build around kind of him starting off with just cryptography and then research and distributed systems, and tying back to a lot of the great academic ties to the ETH, EPFL, to other places, especially within Europe, was an easy sell for people to kind of move down here. And in terms of this vision, we kind of started off, yes, research, and then kind of low level engineering type of work, then kind of started moving up the stack. And we kind of found ourselves in a kind of interesting situation where over time and during the pandemic, people were moving out of California and things like that. So it wasn't always the plan, but more and more, we kind of found that we were able to kind of grow this in addition to California, even though the Bay Area has, the most software engineers and great talent. Having a really good balance is very nice. And so I think the Dfinity symbol actually shows this very well. So it's kind of the power of both Crypto Valley and Silicon Valley, and especially the Silicon Valley type of mentality that's made a difference for us. So I think the net is, so we've actually are a nice case study in terms of being able to grow, especially in the deep tech area here, and be more than just a mailbox. I'm sitting in central Zurich. If I stick my head out here and look out here, I can see the lake and that real mountain view. So that's not like just a stock photo, but that's kind of real life that you saw earlier on before. Just a quick overview as well, where internetcomputer.org is the website. I don't want to go into a whole bunch of stuff, but it's a very layer 1, layer 2 blockchain protocol. So the idea is very much to be at a protocol level where other things could be built on it as well. And we've got a very kind of ambitious mission to, if you think about it in a very simple way, the goal of what we're trying to do is if software is going to eat the world, we want to provide the infrastructure where smart contracts can eat software. And so you can rebuild the entire kind of internet, if you will, the internet computer on the internet itself. So it's pretty interesting. Happy to talk more about that later or at a different time. But it's an ambitious research project that's now in the process of actually trying to transition to $1 trillion network. But the key is also we're not for profit. So the point is as well, we're not here to have a fiduciary responsibility to try to maximize shareholder value. Our goal and our mission of the foundation is to promote the creation, launch, and support of the internet computer, which is the marketing term of the blockchain network that we launched in May of 2021. So I don't want to go into too much kind of details about that, but I just wanted to kind of say that there is an opportunity to do some really kind of cool stuff here and do it in a great way. We've also had a chance to build off some of the backs of some of the giants that I don't know. This is not like a peer-supported review, but I think we might have the largest we might be the largest employer of ex-Googlers in Switzerland. If not, so let me know. But I think unofficially, at least we are, and it's been a great talent pool for us as well, for people who want something smaller and ambitious and things like that. And so I think that there are a lot of opportunities in the ecosystem to create different niches. Everything from a very small startup can actually be able to grow that into something very big too. At least that's been our experience. So if there's, want to keep things going on, but I appreciate the time and happy to answer any questions in the question and answer section. So thank you very much for your time.
Amazing. Thank you, Brandon. I think there will be some extra questions for you following the session. So now moving into executive recruitment, and I give the floor to you, Leo.
Yeah, thank you, Julian. Lovely to see your passion, Brandon. I think here in Switzerland, we are lucky to have really this ecosystem where the country is small enough so that we also know very quickly some of the best talent on the market. When it comes to the executive level recruitment, we speak about a singular market in the sense where here in Switzerland, as it's true also in Europe in general, it's a market which is a little bit aside from the rest of the talent markets because of the nature of the work that is done. We speak about people with a lot of responsibility because of the size of the market, of course, and also per nature, because as you can imagine, it's a very international market. By executive level recruitment, we speak about the C-level, so some of the key functions at the very top of the pyramid, or for a smaller company, people that are managing managers, where we would consider, for instance, director as being one of the key title to speak about executive level recruitment. I had you here one of the different layers that you can find on the market. Of course, it's a bit theoretical considering the size of the company, and also if we speak about a matrix environment or a very simple organogram. But very often we have, with the increasing responsibility level, different layers. The first one being very often the technical director, principal, or just director, that are the people managing managers, so pretty much the first layer when we speak about a large company. Then the people that are managing very often a larger remit. Could it be different product area? Could it be different subpart of a large organizations or different technology or sub-technologies? For the tech kind of profile, we would speak very often about a distinguished engineer, or for let's say a regular title, which is a little bit easier to understand, managing director when we speak for a large company. And then moving to the last and the most senior people we have, could it be the chief technical officer, fellow engineers, or simply a vice president for a very large company that are the most senior role on the market. This is very theoretical, as I said, because it depends on the size of the organization, and you have a few nuances that can be added on top of that, as you can see on the next slide. The different nuances that we can find on the Swiss market is that very often we have, for some specific technologies, some very senior persons that are individual contributors or experts. That is to say that they are not managing directly people, could be because they work in a very large and matrix environment, or could be because the ethos, the posture of those persons is more into advising, sharing technical expertise. And very often those are some of the most exciting, but also the most challenging roles to recruit, because very often when you've been over 15 or 20 years experience in one of a technical role, leading a large team, it's not always easy for you to consider yourself moving into an individual contributor role. So that can have its fair side of challenge. Another nuances that we see is the classical technical leaders leading teams. One of the specificities that the market here in Switzerland is quite mature when we speak about technical leaders. So very often a technical leader, very senior person in the organization, not only can lead team, but sometimes also has additional responsibilities. Could it be driving the digital or technical transformation within the company, or making sure that the person is also in capacity to help the recruiting effort or the growth effort by participating to different events, by being very visible, by sharing a lot when it comes to communicating the employee value proposition to the technical outside world, which is something that we observe here in Switzerland, where technical people are more and more also sought after when it comes to this kind of additional activities beyond, let's say, the classical technical or CTO activities. Another element that we have here in Switzerland is sometimes non-technical leaders that can lead technical teams. It's very often the case when we think about the sales leaders, for instance, where they can have, when it comes to SaaS environment, software environments, etc., remit all people in their team that are very technical for pre-sales, post-sales, without themselves being very technical. This is a kind of nuance that we observe that exists mostly in the largest organization or in organizations that are not completely mature when it comes to the different talents that they have. And last but not least, as some of you already know, we have the non-executive directors or board members that are a little bit aside from the rest of the companies. Here we speak mostly about either a large company or advisor to founders when we speak about a startup. Those profiles are very often very seniors and also not involved in the day-to-day operation in the daily business, but mostly coming here as special advisor to actually the executive directors or the ones that are making decisions on a daily basis. And last but not least, another nuances that we observe here in Switzerland, which I think is also a reflection on what we see globally on the market, is that for the C-level executive, the market is requesting more and more activities, adding additional remits, additional tasks. Could it be working in ESG topics when we speak about a chief financial officer, for instance, working on DEI topic and representation when we think about a CTO building teams, or working on other topics that could be digital transformation or cloudification of specific business unit when we speak about largest. If we move to the next slide, I'm also happy to share a little bit what is important and to take into account when you're recruiting at the executive level here in Switzerland. In Switzerland, as is the case pretty much globally, the executive level remains a candidate-driven market, which means that we have a finite pool of very qualified candidates. Klaus mentioned earlier the blockchain or Web3. Brandon mentioned also some Gen AI. It's true that it's a small market and that the competition can be important, so you have to take that into account. Another element that is important is that the cultural and linguistic nuances in Switzerland can play a role for the C-levels executives that are customer facing, where the market sometimes really enjoy having people that really understands the nuances of the Swiss market. Would it be the languages of a specific part of Switzerland, like in Geneva, speaking French is a little bit helpful, or speaking German in the Swiss German side, even though we can do business in English. So I would say it's more about culture and a little bit less about languages. Another element that is important, definitely when you recruit at the executive level, is to make sure that you build a strong employee value proposition. I think Klaus mentioned very well the fact that our candidates at any level here on the Swiss market are interested in understanding what's the project on the long run, but also what's the growth that we can expect with a specific business, and what is the employee value proposition, what the company can offer in terms of flexibility, for instance, because this is one of the key topics and one of the, let's say, questions that we get the most from the candidates about how the work will be done. And as the market is quite competitive, it's fair to say that you have worked on your employee value proposition. And also the organizational development perspective is also an important element beyond just speaking about compensation. And last but not least, what is important also to bear in mind when you recruit at the executive level is that sometimes it can take a few months, depending on what kind of expertise you are looking for and the desired technologies. In addition to the fact that we have the chance here to have some of the most skilled market in the Europe region, but at some time it can be also a global and regional market at the same time, meaning that some of the best candidates can be in Switzerland or can also be interested to come to Switzerland. So you have with Switzerland potentially a lot of assets that you wouldn't have, for instance, in France, in the UK, or in Germany, with all the elements that we have mentioned earlier. So it's a fantastic market when you recruit for high-level talent. It's a very attractive market, and we hope that we share the very positive image because we are really enjoying being there in Switzerland. And when we recruit, as we do also for different locations, Switzerland is still really definitely one of the most exciting markets here in the European region.
Amazing. Thank you so much to all of the speakers for these really valuable takeaways and insights from your experience working and living in Zurich in Switzerland. So that concludes the content, and now we're going to roll into the Q&A. I have a couple that have come in early as we go through some of the questions here, and we'll just suggest who can tackle these, but by all means, everyone jump in. So the first would be suggested tips on how would a US scale-up create brand awareness if not known in Europe? And I think maybe Klaus, you alluded to that first, and then maybe Brandon, you could touch on how you tackled that with Definity, even though they were European, or it's a European founder, how that went with scaling up to 200 people in Zurich. So again, it's suggested tips on creating brand awareness if the company's not known in Europe.
I mean, brand is a big word. I'm referring to employer brand, right? Because that's what I was talking about before. I think my recommendation would be to be part of the community, whatever that may be. So if you're in blockchain, those are different communities than in machine learning. I think community is very physical still in Switzerland. I think meetups can be a great way, conferences, also specific job boards can get your logo quite visible fast. I think it's also building alliances with associations on the ground. So if your community is whatever it may be, computer vision, then I'm sure there's a community that you can tap into, present your case there, and you also find friends quickly that will forward your call to action, be it apply here, join our team, etc., etc. So I think it's very physical. Find your community, be it on meetups, conferences, and build it up from there. That would be my grassroots approach, especially if you're a startup and have limited capability. I think that's a very organic way to grow. But happy to also forward the question to the other panelists.
Yeah, I think my quick thoughts are that I look at it more on vision and ambitious, especially mission, being able to connect directly with people who fit that, not going as broad, but going kind of very deep and targeted. But I think when you can have vision, funding, and team, and you put those things together and you can articulate that and talk to a specific person about that in the why, I think that also, you kind of get the missionaries as opposed to the mercenaries. So especially getting your feet set up here, it's about tapping into like the local people and also the right people. And I find that if you could be personalized, people a lot of times are willing to have a talk with you. They're not necessarily the ones who are going to say, hello, welcome to Switzerland, we're so glad to have you here. Type of place. But I found that, especially kind of coming more from New York, people are very open when you make the first move. And even if you come in with English or not knowing German, it's okay. A lot of times, it's like, what are you doing here? Or, yes, let's talk. So I think part of it is just kind of being targeted, knowing your audience, and having a great kind of mission as well.
I think an obvious one is also to connect to Greater Zurich Area. I know from the Canadian startup that came here, they have people on the ground, right? And Switzerland is small and well connected. So be it finding your community, your next office, insurances, stuff like that. Greater Zurich Area has people on the ground everywhere, and they are willing to help you. I think that's not to be forgotten when you relocate to Switzerland.
Yeah, and in general,
and it's for free.
It's very well received when you approach candidates, when you initiate conversation and share a little bit more about your project. We are in a country where everyone will be very polite, very kind with you. I know it's not always the case, but here everyone is kind of used to being approached, used to have initial conversation. So this is something you can always do. And definitely Greater Zurich Area, the authorities, everyone will be very happy to help and to take the time.
Amazing. One question from the audience here is, are candidates in Switzerland open to work with US time zones, like 4 to 5 hour overlaps? And which are the benefits that Swiss candidates cherish the most, aside from salary and vacations? We get that one a lot. So floor's open to who wants to tackle that.
Well, I can take the first part because I have recruited some candidates here working with US time or having global roles. At the executive level, I would say it's fair to say that a lot of the executive people are used to traveling a lot, and part of the working architecture once you have a global role is that you have to manage a different time zone, sometimes US time zone, but also APAC time zone. So I would say as long as you inform the candidate, there's no surprise, there's transparency on what is expected, I think you can find candidates that would be open to it. And you also have some candidates that would be happy with this kind of setup just because either they are regularly in the countries with different time zone, or just because they enjoy starting their day a little bit later. That could be also something very good in terms of how you make it work with the family, for instance, or with different hobbies. I remember Kenny's that was enjoying having a global role because he was starting his day at 11 in the morning here in Switzerland and was spending time with the kid. So I would say this is something which is feasible, and I would definitely advise on being transparent on what to be expected, and also to make sure that the person knows what to expect.
Yeah, I can jump in real quick here too. I think transparency, I agree, is kind of key. Setting expectations properly is really important. And I could give two perspectives on this. One is even my own career here, which before I was very kind of oriented in terms of working late. I stayed sometimes in the office till 9 or 9:30, 4 nights a week. That was the reality of my situation and at the level I was. I did that willingly. It was my choice, like no regrets, but I'm also at a different part of life now as well. So I actually have some different types of limits in terms of where I do, and it's been very cool. And my manager, who's in the U.S., is totally cool with that, and we're able to talk it through and be kind of clear about where the boundaries are. I also should say that a lot of times, especially for technical people or engineers, a lot of times they're not morning people. So like being later in the day and working later in the evening is no problem. In fact, that's actually a kind of a bonus. What a Spanish guy I recruited actually really reminded me of that, because I was a little bit nervous. I was like, the rest of his team's in California and he's been out here. He's actually like, oh, this is great. I'd prefer to do that because I'm going to have dinner at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock my time anyway. So it actually worked very well for him. But I think also one of the things, like there are some companies that have dinner. There's a double-edged sword for that in the office. I think potentially is a big bonus for some people, but it also sends a signal that you're expected to be there. So it kind of it's a trade-off that you have to figure out and make for yourselves.
Fantastic. Great. There's a lot of questions that are coming in, and I just want to highlight, if we don't get the chance to get through all of them today, please do feel free to reach out to us, and we can designate the various questions to our speakers. And again, I think I've seen a couple questions here in the chat that we will also be sending the presentation out to everyone, so you can have a recorded broadcast of what we spoke about today and can reference these slides. Let's see. Oh, one quick one is, in terms of the salary breakdown, does that include various social costs? I don't know if there's a quick high-level answer that we want to bring into that. We don't have to go into too many details, but in comparison to the US, there are social costs included. I don't know, Matthias or Klaus, if you want to address that one.
So Klaus, you might answer to your slides. You can, in general terms, answer the question.
Yeah, in terms of slides, we took the gross salary that the candidate gets without social security contribution of the employer on top. So that depends a bit on the region where the company would be based and the employee. So Matthias, you can give a range for the regions and the general orientation. I'm not fully aware of the social security contributions on the employer side in the US, but I'm sure Switzerland is competitive also here.
Yeah, Gillian, you might know the comparison. I know the Swiss side, but you can better compare the two sides.
Oof, I don't know. Maybe I defer that one to Brandon too, but I think that they're not included always here. But Brandon?
Yeah, my quick take, and I've been over here for a while, so actually, to be honest with you, my folk perspective is actually more European, and I would say compared to a lot of the other European countries, what you find is actually higher salaries, lower taxes for the individual, and like less actually cheaper stuff for the company compared to Germany, compared to France, for instance, compared to the UK. So I don't have the exact breakdown, especially towards the US, but it's relatively competitive, and yeah, most at least candidates like it a lot.
As a just reference, we estimate 1/6 of overhead that would come on top. So that would be for Switzerland. And that again happens to be dependent on the exact region. Cantons are a bit different here.
Exactly. Okay, I think probably time for two more. So what % of student recruiting is sourced from within Switzerland versus outside? And I think that question could also be applicable to higher levels. You know, what percentage is then sourced within and within Europe or globally? Do you guys have a range or an idea approximately for your clients or for your companies?
I don't know the range, but I actually want to give a shout out to ETH. Actually, one of the things that they have done a phenomenal job, at least even since I have been here, is actually doing a fantastic job recruiting all over the world. So Central Europe, Eastern Europe, Middle East, other places, they're going out and getting great technical people, getting them for masters and PhDs, and then it's a talent pool here, and then allowing them to stay here as well. So I think there's a lot of companies that have benefited for that, and they've done it upstream. So I don't know the exact percentage, but I think it's relatively high. And I just want to give them some props because they've done great, and we've benefited.
Definitely, especially with some of the relationships they have with some of the schools, at least here in the US, and also, of course, with the facility in Singapore. Good. So trying to make sure I hit all of these questions. Key points to keep in mind when relocating candidates to Switzerland. I'm not sure if that's been addressed a bit already with the questions in terms of benefits, but I think there could be some elements, of course, potentially on the personal, on the social side. But
do you want me to take this one?
Yes, please.
Because I have the perspective as we recruit really globally and also have sometimes some transfer from the US. I would say perhaps three elements. The first one being that the person understands what's not only the cost of living, but the overall way of cost can be calculated here in Switzerland, because it's a little bit a different system if you compare to the US. So I guess it's not only just currency change when you relocate someone and say, hey, this would be your salary in Swiss franc in Switzerland versus your salary in the US in dollars. You have a very different approach when it comes to taxes as well. So if we speak about someone who has the US nationality, the person will continue also to pay the taxes with the US policy, whereas if it's someone coming from another country, depending on the canton where the person will be, the tax can be a little bit different, a little bit higher or a little bit lower, depending where you are. Zurich is considered as one of the most business-friendly tax environments when it comes to corporate tax and individual tax. But definitely, depending on what's the nationality of the individual, it may be a slight change. And also overall, as we said, it's a smaller country. So on top of the salary itself, you can have very different way of breaking down the cost when we speak about food, when we speak about having a flat. So I would say considering exactly if you want as a company to pay for a relocation package and what do you want to add in there. I would say that's some of the most important things to consider.
Amazing, thank you. Okay, well,
Can I just start one quick thing? Sorry, Julie, about that.
Yes.
I think that's actually really good. That's actually really good content. One thing I would maybe add is that in addition to just the quantifiable, like how much does it cost and things like that, there's really also a kind of a societal getting people set up, especially if you don't set speak the language. And so having a little bit of infrastructure there is also really, really kind of helpful. And I think the good news is too, as we've had like a lot more foreign people coming in and relocating to Switzerland over the past decade, there's a lot of content online now that makes things a lot easier. So there's a lot of tips, there's a lot of support groups, there's a lot of expat groups as well here that can help support new arrivals, and it's kind of relatively easy to meet people, if you will.
And also from my side, if families are involved, kids, a question of international schools versus public schools. So usually public school is a very good quality. This is different from other countries, but also we are here happy to help, to find the right schools, to check the individual situation. Usually we actually start with kids if they're involved, and then like the family setup, and then later follows the office setup. Because if you want to make a sustainable setup, then it makes sense that the first key members, that they feel comfortable and it's convenient for them.
Amazing. Okay, well, with that, great answers, everyone, and fantastic questions from the audience. This concludes our session. I thank you all for your participation and your attendance. And as mentioned, we will be sending a recording of this presentation with the slides out to registered attendees. So thank you and have a good evening or day wherever you're located in the world. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.